I'm Tom Kenny. I'm the editor of Mix Magazine, and we thank you for coming out to Mix Nashville, 3rd annual. Before we get started with our keynote conversation here, I'd like to have a few thank yous. First of all, to Soundcheck, to Ben Jumper, Jan, Matt, and Deanne who helped us yesterday. It's hard to believe that less than 4 months ago this place was gutted back to the studs and probably the epicenter of your May floods. So the work they've done here has been just astounding. And we appreciate them opening up to us, and we appreciate them opening up the facility to all of us here today. Next, I'd like to thank our sponsors, as you've seen on the rotating slides. And please make an effort throughout the day to stop by B, C, and D. Make your big ring around and say hello to them and thank them for coming. They stuck with us through this time and through the delays, and we're certainly glad to be here. Next, I'd like to thank the interns. None of you see this, but this place was empty yesterday, and we had 15 young men from the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences have come in here and worked all day, came up here at 8 o'clock this morning and helped us out. Tremendous help for the people here. And finally, I want to thank you. We postponed an event. We go through our own troubles, but you come out here. You're ready to come in May, and we thank you for signing up, for coming back out in September. We can't thank you enough. We love this event at Mix Magazine, and we certainly love coming into Nashville. Couple quick announcements. We have programming that we've added in Studio D for anybody who's interested in live sound with Yamaha and Meyer. They have programs throughout the day, presentations, and a panel discussion in the afternoon. We have a silent auction we've set up through Pepper's Pro Shop down in the hall there. The money made today will go to benefit the Nashville Engineer Relief Fund. So please do what you can, get some good deals on some gear. We've had a couple of programming announcements. Tomorrow afternoon, you will see that at 2 o'clock, we have a master class scheduled with John Spencer on an important proposal that the Metadata Initiative from the Library of Congress and the Producers and Engineers Wing of the Recording Academy. So please make an effort to come by. It's a very important topic to get engineers and producers paid. We will end the show on Tuesday night with a concert out in the parking lot featuring a local band like Candy Red. Please stick around, enjoy, hang out, and enjoy some sounds at 6 o'clock. And please forgive, I'm an editor, I care about words, and I have a horrible typo in the program guide. It says lever, lever. We do know this song by Jared Neiman is Lover, Lover. So let's begin. I'm pleased to announce today we kick off with the keynote conversation. We've asked a couple of well-known folks in Nashville to come down, and at the last minute I found that one of my dear friends, Maureen Droney, the head of the Producers Engineers Wing of the Recording Academy and a former Los Angeles editor of Mix Magazine, was going to be in town and graciously came up and offered to introduce our fine keynote. So Maureen, take it away.
Good morning. They put me in the middle to keep these guys separated. I'm just going to introduce our two gentlemen here. A multiple Grammy Award winner in multiple genres, including in the much coveted Best Engineered Album category. Richard Dodd is a recording, mixing, and mastering engineer with a long roster of clients, including Tom Petty, Dixie Chicks, George Harrison, Sheryl Crow, Green Day, and a host of other great people. Richard Dodd. Also, a multiple Grammy Award winner for his work with Taylor Swift and Vince Gill, engineer-producer Justin Niebank has also worked with a huge number of artists, including Marty Stewart, Patti Loveless, LeAnn Rimes, John Mellencamp, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Dolly Parton, Willie Nelson, Pat Green, Martina McBride, Keith Urban, Daughtry, many, many, many more. Justin Niebank. So just briefly, a little bit of background. In an interview I did with Justin some years ago, I referred to the short description of him as Chicago native, childhood music fanatic, electric bass player. And then in Chicago, he became an all-purpose engineer, recording jingles by day and blues at night. So just briefly, wanted to ask Justin how he got to Nashville.
In the late 80s, early 90s, I had the pleasure of working with a guy named Barry Beckett, who was a producer here in Nashville. And at the time, I had grown really tired of sort of the 80s recording style, and I came down here and did one session or I saw the musicians playing together and there was an emphasis on groove, and it just enlightened me enormously, and I did whatever I could to get down here. And so I luckily became his engineer after a while. I don't think that he cared whether or not I got great sounds. He just cared that I could tap my foot in time. And seriously, and that's an interesting aspect of engineering, that what you think is important sometimes is not. It's who you are as a person, and he wanted somebody who could understand groove. Mm-hmm. So luckily it was great.
And then I had to come up with a short description of Richard. So that was British pop engineer, moves to the U.S., loves bands and acoustic guitars, records bands and acoustic guitars, ends up in Nashville, discovers he loves mastering too. So you want to elaborate a little bit how you ended up in Nashville?
Pretty much sums it up. I came here to visit a friend who had moved here from L.A., another English engineer called Peter Coleman. He just moved here with his family. And I met and fell in love with the lady that's my wife, and that was 20 years ago, so give or take. And that's it, really. I had no intention of working here. I'd spent all my time either working in England or other parts of the world, lots of times in Los Angeles, and this was as good a place as any to live, have a nice family, and still travel to where apparently I was needed. As it turned out, I preferred to live and stay here and work here. That's it.
My first question, Richard already edited. I said we know it's a given that the largest enclave of the best musicians in the world are here in Nashville. And Richard made me edit that to one of the largest enclaves of the best musicians in the world. Currently, here's the question. Currently, in the overall music business, there's a split, really, I think, between two places where the real money is. In general, there's kind of and I have to use the word manufactured pop, urban kind of recorded music that uses very little live instrumentation and lots of digital manipulation, for both editing and sonics. And then there's the concert business, which is still, thank goodness, for the most part, about live playing and singing. So those seem to be the two areas that are really making the big money right now. And I'm wondering, the fact that Nashville is so performance-oriented and performance is so valued here, how does that fit into those two things, or doesn't it?
Well, historically for me, the live tours used to be to support the record. People would go out to tour so that people would hear the record and hopefully go and buy their record. It's the opposite now. The recording is made to put bums on seats and to get people to come to the gig, because that's where you're going to make the money. Selling T-shirts is going to bring you more revenue than selling records. And there's just been that switch. They're still intertwined. Unfortunately, the attitude has permeated the recording process, where now it's an inconvenience for the artist to actually have to spend time in the studio. We get situations where the artist, if we're fortunate enough that they even know which song they're attending to record, will allocate maybe an hour to lay down some versions of the definitive performance, leave and let the people the other side of the glass, as we would typically call it, assemble, correct, manipulate, and make something like that sounds like every other record that's out there, highly processed, highly tuned, highly impersonal. And that's what we have today. So we've gone from spending a lot of time in the studio with an artist that's committed to doing their best. You don't hear an artist say, "Can I do that again? I've got another one in me." And also with the knowledge that going back in time, that meant losing probably what they already had. They were going to commit themselves to doing it again, hoping it was better. And if it wasn't, they're going to have to stay until it was. Now it's just, well, I'll do another pass. I can do another pass.
So are we playing against our strengths? Is that what? That's
a really good way of putting it. I mean, I have to agree with Richard to a certain extent on what he's saying about what's going on musically. But on the other hand, I am working with artists who are interested in performance. And one of the things that's astounding about Nashville is there is all over town people actually playing together. Whether or not the people on the other side of the glass will commit to them and keeping what they're actually playing. We have an astounding base of musicians who can play together and can move dynamically and move groove-wise, but then you've got people on the other side of the glass who have committed them to saying, I'll just playlist that or playlist that. So ultimately, we're not getting music that is honest. and the people are not truly playing together by and large. Now, there are exceptions, and thank God I'm working on stuff where it is truly live, and I'm still trying to work on records where it's almost a one-mic recording technique. But in essence, we have gotten to the point where the technology has worked against what we're trying to record. It's unusual. It's a strange thing.
Yeah. I'm fortunate as well that when I am still asked to record, it's to record in the old way. I do get to work with people playing at once in a room and taking it again if it's not right. They do have the knowledge and the safety net that they can cut and paste and cherry pick, but that's always been the case. There's always been, you know, the analog razor blade was the analog way of cutting and pasting, basically. And manipulation has always been there, and has always been a good thing, I think. You know, to present to the public the best available is not a bad thing to aim for. But to manipulate something to a degree that it's soulless is a bad thing, and goes on way too much right now. You'll hear excuses of the budgets aren't big enough to allow us to spend 2 days doing the lead vocal. Well, smaller budgets shouldn't mean more technology. It should be more talent. We need to spend our time recording talent, spend our time with talented people. As Justin said to me before we came in here, you know, one of the things we miss is being in awe of the people we're recording. It doesn't happen enough. It happens more frequently, I suspect, in Nashville than it does in many parts of the world. And I'm very fortunate, as I've said, to be one of those lucky people to be in the presence of the best people much of the time. But you can't help, as my other job of mastering engineer, I get to hear the finished product. I get to hear phone calls from people involved on the technical side, concerned with what I might think of their work, and they want to give me the parameters that they had to work in. The reason this is distorted, I didn't record that. That was done in the artist's bedroom on his own, you know, because that's the budget they had. I didn't do this, I didn't do that, he made me do this, and this, you know, it's before I've heard anything. And you know what, I pretty much know what it's going to sound like anyway before I hit play. Unfortunately for me, and for all of us, you know, we use our eyes much more than we used to record. And you can see when something's probably going to be worth a second look at. They come in disastrous shapes and forms. And sometimes, fortunately, you get an anomaly. You know, I have a friend who decided to take a hiatus from recording for 10 years, you know, because he could go into semi-retirement. And then he changed his mind, he was bored. So he came, I'll come move to Nashville, I'll buy a house, put a studio in, find an artist and record her. And so he did. He physically built a studio with his bare hands, every single element of it, from flooring to wiring, everything. And then equipped his studio and borrowed some of my gear to get started and presented me with a mix. And it's incredible. He hasn't learned all the bad habits that, you know, he's just got recall of, there's only one way to record something, with passion. You know, you start with talent, you offer a little bit of passion, encouragement, as you said earlier as well, a lot of vocalizing backwards and forwards. And then you capture that the most simple and professional way possible and move on. And what he's done is incredible. I hope you all get to hear it.
Justin said something really interesting before when he said that coming up, he had to run to keep up with the artists that he worked with, and you were always trying to, you know, be up to the level that they were. And sometimes now you feel like you're kind of out in front, driving. Well,
everything's transferred a little bit too much, and I think that this is an overview of the entire record business. The artist should be astoundingly talented. The material that they're bringing forth should be the best and innovative material, and instead we're dumbing it down considerably. And now it's like the artist is almost a second nature, and you're like, come on, can you keep up? And well, I love working with artists, and I think in the old days, I sound like an old guy, but they were so astoundingly talented that you did everything in your power just to keep up with them. It was incredible. And I think that's changed now. And is the technology at fault at some? Possibly. Is there a little bit of everyone's a little fat and lazy? Yes. I think that's part of it too.
Let's talk about the technology a little, because I don't live in Nashville, and I hear from around the rest of the country about how bad things are translating between home studios and commercial studios, and that people's file management habits are pretty abysmal. And I'm wondering, is it better in Nashville? I think of you guys as the technological leaders. You know, that's the other dichotomy about Nashville, is people think it's a who don't live here think it's this, you know, really classic music, good old boy kind of place, but it's always been really cutting edge in terms of engineering and technology. So are you guys better at that here, or is that?
Well, I'm really proud of the Nashville community of engineers. I think it's absolutely an amazing group of people, and I've always been a little bit bothered when I get the impression from people in the other parts of the world that we're kind of behind it, but I see it every day, the people on the front lines of using new equipment, you know, great signal chain, actually caring about it. I've always been proud of it. Now, at the same time, as someone who mixes so much, I get a lot of file stuff that is pretty terrible. And I don't mind if the let me just say something about a recording. I don't mind if a recording is bad, if the performance and the soul and the passion behind it is, you know, raises the hair on the back of my neck. I'll take something that is every other engineer in the world would say is crap, and if it means something to me, I think it's the greatest recording ever. That's how I look at recording. And by and large, I'll take the combination. As far as Nashville goes, I would say that the quality, by and large, is really, really good of what I get. But the worst thing that I get is when there's something that shows up and it's technically messed up, and then there's no soul behind it because desperately trying to get a performance out of somebody who doesn't care, or it maybe needs to be spend 6 years learning how to sing, basically.
How about like file management, things being labeled, things being...
I'm lucky. I have great assistants who work for me who take care of all.
Oh, so you don't know how it's getting...
Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, nowadays, with the way that budgets are changing, the way it's like there used to be a time when we would record and we would spend, you know, 6 weeks on a record and you'd be inside a whole record. Now it's like very, very piecemeal, and I can accept that. And particularly because I mix so much, I'll get singles here and there. And occasionally, with budgets, if it's an artist that I believe in, I'll do something at my home or anywhere, and occasionally I'm stuck not being able to afford an assistant, so there are times I get caught. And yes, there are times when it shows up and it's, you know, people have not finished their job. If you're a young engineer, you should take passion in the details of your work and should never submit files or tape to anybody that is not well and professionally finished. It's the same thing as being an assistant when you work in studios. You should always have a studio look photo ready. Everything should be about pride in your work, and if you submit something to be mixed, there shouldn't, your file should be consolidated, it should be finished. To dump something on a mixer that's not completed is inappropriate to me, and I see it a fair amount.
I don't know how many of you would be amazed at this, but from the mastering point of view, the formats that the tapes are delivered in and the quality of the tapes are delivered in have no relationship to their source. I've had expertly documented, well-delivered files from a bedroom and crap from major studios. It happens. Now, there's a phone call sometimes. We didn't have time, we were working till 4 a.m., you know, sorry it's this, sorry it's that. Or even worse, it's uploaded to you. So it's never there. It's never the original. It's uploaded, you get it, and if I take the time to document what it is, then it gets documented. Other than that, you just wait for a year's time when someone makes the phone call. You don't know where the master is for... Do you happen to, you know, everyone assumes, you know, no doubt that someone somewhere has a copy that they shouldn't have, and maybe, if it's worth having a copy of, we'll be fortunate that there's an illegal copy somewhere of something musical. But I can guarantee you that somewhere there's backed up 1,000 times a version of something we never ever want to hear again. It's the way it works, you know. I get things brought to me. I don't actually have a 1-inch tape machine. I don't particularly like them, but I have 1/2-inch and 1/4-inch tape machines and 2-inch multi-track. I get that format. I get hard drives, USB flash drives. I get DVDs, CDs without any writing on them. I get, the best one I've had is when I asked for the master, the guy disassembled his cell phone and took out a SIM card. Hey, you know.
What did you say? What do you
I hope I've got a reader for that, you know. I'm not surprised anymore. And that's what happens. Now, that doesn't represent what's on the tape, or what's on the medium, but it kind of makes you think before you, if someone hands you this little thing like this that they're struggling to get, you kind of don't expect too much from it as a musical level. Someone hands you a nice hefty tape box, you think, well, there's a passion there somewhere. Someone thinks that maybe this is the way to go tonally, musically, or whatever, and you form another opinion. Unfortunately, the one on the sim could be a lot better than the one on the tape, because again, we have another situation where history, somebody has learnt that tape sounds good. Tape doesn't sound good. Tape sounds like crap. But sometimes good stuff gets put on tape.
Exactly.
You know? And that's a wonderful thing. And sometimes good stuff takes on an additional character because of tape. Yet another wonderful thing. But putting crap to tape sounds like crap with hiss. You know?
Tape won't fix it.
Tape can't fix anything.
Do both of you find, or do you get calls from your clients saying, do you have the masters like a year later? Or,
Oh,
or,
it happens
'cause I'm
every
hearing
week.
that a
Someone's
lot.
leaving a message right now.
It happens. I have an assistant named Drew Bowman, and he gets that 3 or 4 times a week easily. And it's because people, you know, projects, once again, projects are so disjointed now. People will go in and record 3 songs here with this producer. I'll go in through 3 songs and do a single, and I'll mix a single, but I won't do the rest of the record, and it's spread over, and no one's keeping track of it, and there's so many different formats. We tried our best to keep everything together. I've started now to dump things onto a drive, so I have something always. But it's been hairy for the last 5, 6 years, big time.
Yeah, very much so. But I mean, there's some positive thing to add to this. It's you know, because you don't know what you're going to get, there's sometimes a revelation. You know, I've just got this thing came in on a USB drive, and it's somebody's done their own record, and they want it mastered, and they're prepared to pay the price. And you listen to it, and you think, my God, you know, why didn't these people have a record deal? They're really good. That, you know, it's pleasant, well-crafted music. And then you move on to the next project, which isn't necessarily the case. You just don't know where it's coming from. That's what we should know, where it's coming from. It should come in. The people working in the bedroom should adopt a professional attitude. Professionalism is what's required right now to get us all through these harder times. Those of you that choose the professional attitude will be the winners. Those that choose the that will do attitude will be the losers. So be professional, improve your game, bring your game up, you'll shine, and you'll win. You'll get through. Because it's not easy out there right now. I know some wonderful, wonderful engineers that aren't busy enough.
Exactly, Richard. I mean, if you're doing music at home, some of my favorite stuff is people recording at home and not knowing what they're doing because things magical can happen. But if you have any questions, I mean, this town is overrun with talented engineers who could help you do that. And I wish people would take, I suggest that to people all the time. Just call your friendly local engineer.
You know, I don't know if it applies here so much, but professionalism is not doesn't preclude creativity at all. And striving to be an amazing professional is a hugely creative thing to do. Maybe we're speaking to the choir here, but around the country I see people who it's kind of a dirty word. You know, if you're a pro, it means you're not being really creative, and it's so the opposite.
But there's one very, very difficult thing for you to face being professional. You've got to say no. You've got to say, no, that's beneath me. No, that is crap. I will not do it. And then you've got to listen to your wife say, but somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to get that money. You know, why not you? If you spend your time being a pro and building a reputation, don't harm it in one instance. You take a job for $500 as a special favor to somebody, or because you desperately need $500, guess what? That's now your rate. You may think of yourself as a $1,500 a day or a moment engineer, but the moment you make it $500, that's your rate. You're going to have to live with that. It's going to take you a long, long time to get over it. Don't believe for one second that because you're doing them a favor and it's, oh, just for you, you know, as long as you don't tell anyone, all right? Whatever way you couch it to make sure that that fish doesn't get off the hook, beware. You'll pay the price. It'll take you a long time to get that back. The people that will do it for too little money are typically desperate, and I bless them and I hope that they get through what their thing is, but they're not doing anybody any favors. The fact that you've got professional people working on a product at the end of the job and the cheapest possible working on at the beginning is not a good deal. It starts with the artist performance, as Justin quite correctly said. It starts with having somebody know how to capture that. You don't have to be a genius, but you don't have to have learnt it from a book either. That's the wrong way. Looking on an online forum and finding out what a mic chain is not the way to record a vocal. You need ears. You need to be aware. You need to know when you've got the right mic microphone, the right limiter. You need to know when you've got them set incorrectly for that moment, for that artist. You don't get that from the forum. I'll give you all the tips, what did you do and how did you do it all day long, because they mean nothing. They mean nothing to you and they mean nothing to me. I could apply my own rules to the next session, and if I'm not using these, I won't know whether they're right or not. You've got to be trained, and the way you train is by doing it. The way to learn this job is as an apprentice. Hook yourself, if you're not already there, hook yourself onto somebody that is, in your opinion, there, and do your best to emulate, learn, adapt, and mold what you learn into you.
We don't have a lot of time, and there's one question I wanted to get to for sure about intellectual property, and I also wanted to give these two some time to just say what they really, you know, whatever was on their mind that they wanted to communicate today. But the first one, the question, the intellectual property one, is who owns the sounds? Who owns the mix? What about stems? It's a big topic in Nashville about having to make stems and not getting paid extra for it. Can we talk about those issues?
Well, that's a real frontline issue for me. About 7, 8 years ago, I mean, I've always mixed the same way since the 80s. You know, I would do a master mix, a vocal up, a vocal down, a TV mix, and an instrumental mix, and that was it. And you know, because I would obsess about the mix. I think it was pretty right. And a few years back, because I was so busy and I was working with some people, and it's, you know, I'm not criticizing people for it, but you know, we've run into a world of people having a hard time making decisions. It's not like this is new. This has been going on a long time, but now it's a lot easier not to make decisions. So, because I was busy, I was requested to do stem mixes, which I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, because you know, I can't take a day and take a studio and do a full recall on a console if I'm doing it that way. So we do stems, and that means if somebody wants the guitar part on the B section of the second verse slightly louder, we can do that. Or if you want the vocal up in the bridge, you know, we can pull all that off with stems and then edit it in, which is cool with me. Well, 6 years later now, the labels are requiring it, and other engineers have been up in arms about it, and I was like, and I'm sort of like the bad guy because I was doing it just as a favor. And now it's become required, and it's just sort of hit me about 6 months ago when a label head called and said, yeah, we're going to buy a Pro Tools rig over at the label, so we want to make sure you send us all the stems. And I was thunderstruck at the time, and I thought, well, I'm not smart enough to figure out why I'm feeling this way, but something's bothering me about this, and I don't know what it is. And I've talked to other engineers about it, and other engineers' attitude is slightly different than mine. They're like, this is my mix, and I can tell when my mix is not on the radio, and that's cool if you want to feel that way. I'm less precious about it. If I get a great, compelling vocal on a song, and it feels good, and it communicates the message of what's done, I think the mix can be different, and I think that's what translation and what we do is important. You should translate it on the radio, on laptop speakers, on a big stereo, whatever it is. The mix changes no matter where you play it. So you have to find the core of what's important, and that's whatever is the communicating thing. So I'm not quite as precious about my mix. If it changes, that's cool. But what does bother me is when I've worked with some young artists who have not defined their vocals ability. They're great writers. They've they've done something that's pretty extraordinary, but they haven't really learned to sing. They haven't been in the clubs for 6 years and discovered and made all the mistakes. So I have to sit in the control room and dynamically work on that vocal and re-EQ moments and do things. I spend a lot of time because all the great drum sounds, all the other stuff, it doesn't matter. If the singer doesn't communicate the song, it's game over. It's pointless. So I'll spend an enormous amount of time on that, and I'll also spend an enormous amount of time on subtle vocal effects that will emotionally lift choruses and bridges and do all kinds of things and try to make that vocal as compelling as I possibly can. Well, I make a stem of that, and it goes off to a pop guy, and he gets $6,000 and he uses my vocal stem, and he just puts it up. And that's where I'm troubled by the whole thing. And I'm not in competition with those guys. It's just that it's like, and so finally this year I started talking about that. And it's a bit of a concern to me, and I wish that the community of engineers and producers would get together on this. I still feel like, I was talking to a producer about this, there should be a version of the song. I think it's playing into the mediocrity of music right now that we do all these different versions. When I came up in music, it was like, there was the version. And they should be committed in stone, and whether people want to play it or not, whether it has a steel or a dobro on it, doesn't matter. If it's a great piece of music, it's a great piece of music. And right now we're continually playing into this thing of let's do whatever we can to get it through this kind of thing, and the stems are making that possible. And all the different formats are making that possible. And it concerns me. Do I have the answers for it? I don't know. How it's affecting me is a bit of a problem. But, I mean, now I can't stop it. The problem is that now, of course, as budgets are dropping, people are saying, okay, we want you to mix it in the box, but we still want stems. And now, as this was just happened 2 weeks ago, I basically told my assistant to say, no, it's not going to happen, unless they want to pay more for it. So now I've thrown it back into the labels courts and to see if they're willing to pay for this. I mean, that's the big issue here. So there's two things. It's the intellectual property. Is our mix, a mix that Richard does or I do or anyone does in this room, is that our property, or are we just part of a group of people that are working on it? That's how I want to figure this out.
Any comments on that?
If someone has an opinion on the mix, they should be there during the mix, is my opinion. The stems, I will go as far as an instrumental a track, TV track as we used to call it, and a vocals only track. And if they want to do something with that, then that's fine. The fact is that you give them a vocal stem, it's got all your effects on it, if there are effects, and the next person is going to have to deal with that. I like the idea of not letting other people mess with it. I agree with Justin that it's his work, he's put the effort in, and he shouldn't let go until he's been adequately paid for the work he's done. And I think that the other engineer, if it goes on to another engineer, doesn't matter how much he's being paid, isn't worth his salt if he doesn't want to ask for the source material for the vocal. I mean, so they're being lazy. And the problem is in there is that their reputation might be at $6 grand a song or whatever it is, but in actuality they're getting much less than that now because they're having to cut back the same as everybody else. But they want to keep the reputation there. So they'll do it faster, or they'll do 2 for the price of 1, but they won't reduce their rate. Don't reduce your rate. It's not the thing to do, really. It's a downward spiral. We need to improve on our professionalism. The stems thing isn't very professional in my opinion. However, if that's what you're being paid enough to do, do it. Fair enough. If they're going to screw it up, then the artist should take issue with them. They shouldn't take issue with you. It is ours until we've received enough payment to let it be somebody else's. We don't have a situation where we get residuals. The people employing many of us, the big corporations, if I may mention Disney, for example, are very anti-unions and very anti-residuals. In fact, they flat out don't have anything to do with them. So you get paid for what you do. And what you do, you hand over to them. It becomes their property and their rights to do with whatever you wish. And if you've done a deal with them at the front end to supply them with stems, hey, that's what you did. If they ask afterwards for stems, you say no, not part of the deal, and make them pay.
So before we go to questions from the audience, I'm hoping that there are a few things that we were talking about when we were sitting in the room next door, maybe about why we like living in Nashville, or about what's good and bad about music today, or anything you want to do in the 5-minute rant period that we have here.
Do you have a timer for this?
That's Tom over there.
You notice I haven't ranted yet.
You haven't ranted yet? No, we were in the back talking about, the sort of things that if we were sitting with everybody individually, I mean, in the studio nowadays, or in a writing session, or when you're hanging out with anybody in music nowadays, we're all talking about what's going on in the music business and what are we going to do next. And it's a conversation that's ongoing and always intriguing to me. And I think about it all the time. I mean, I'm really lucky in that I'm working a lot, but I think about where the future of music is going and the fact that nobody's buying CDs. And I was bringing it up to the folks here, that whenever I have the opportunity to talk to people about it and they want my opinion, whether it's worth anything or not, I feel strongly that the problem in the music industry or making records nowadays just comes down to one thing, and that's honesty. And I've been lucky to work on some artists who, if you compared them to other people as far as great singers and stuff, everyone would go, oh, that person can't sing, they can do it. But they're honest. They're singing about who they are. They're actually communicating to an audience. And I feel like we've run into a situation where our industry has facilitated dishonesty in music. And when we were talking about the players in Nashville, we have the greatest core of musicians on the planet, but do they really ultimately get to play together? Or is it manipulated so much that no longer is that performance honest? Is the singer who's coming in, is that singer really there, or is it just a mouthpiece for the publishing industry to be able to sell their songs? And is that singer there because they're passionate and they're better than anybody else out there, and it is the driving force in their life to sing, and they can bring it every time they sing? That's honesty. When we have to piece it together and tune it and fly and try to pocket stuff because they haven't figured out what to do, that's dishonest. And I feel like there's a continual role of this dishonesty in music that is partially to blame for what's going on. And I don't want to leave everything on a negative tone that we're screwing up here, because ultimately what's going to happen, in my opinion, is that an artist or artists are going to come along who are totally honest, who sing about who they truly are, and work with people who are just as passionate as they are, and that will cut through and save all this. The only thing that I would impart, because this room is full of engineers, is that when I started making records and started listening to music, the creative side of music was the innovative side, and the recording side, I mean, it was still innovative, but the creative side was the innovation and creativity is what drove the industry. Now when I listen to records, the technical recording side is now the innovative side, while the creative side has lost its edge as far as being innovative. And I think that balance has to come back. People have to decide. I mean, I'm a geek too. I love to play with computers, and I love to play with everything. It's awesome. But nothing thrills me more than being able to put up one microphone and move the musicians around and actually record a performance. That ultimately, completely shadows everything else that I would do. And I would hope that everybody would at least try things like that. I mean, ultimately, how you want to make records and how you want to go about things is your choice. But if you can drive yourselves towards the creative, making the creative thing, strip away all the technology and all the brilliant editing, all your amazing drum sounds and your great guitar sounds, and just listen to the song and the singer, and is that worth listening to? And if that's worth listening to, then you've got something. And then all that technology will then actually mean something, as opposed to just help the artist and or the creative side limp along and maybe sound like a great record. That's my rant. Sorry. I won't do that again today.
40 years ago, we weren't called recording engineers, we were called balance engineers. And balance is what we need in this industry and in our lives to continue and grow, to survive at this instance. It's looking pretty bad as far as making money out of doing our job. We need to look to diversify, look for other ways of using our talents and making money from using our talents. And some people can actually survive because they have an income that isn't necessarily 100% based on being an engineer or a producer. Good luck to them. That's great. I'd rather you step aside and let somebody that needs to make the money have the work, but okay. We need to balance our family lives with our work too. One of the most wonderful things about living and working in Nashville is, pretty much come 6 o'clock, you're done, there are exceptions, obviously, very notable ones, but in the studio, when I was starting, again, sorry to be boring about that, but it was a premium to use a studio on the weekend or after 6 o'clock. It was more expensive. Now you can get them for free. In Nashville in particular, it's the way things have changed. The balance in Nashville is much better than it is in many places in the world, let alone in the US. And the panic we're in is going to force you to reconsider that balance. I've got to do this job. I've got to leave town. I've got to do this. That may not be the best choice. I would advise you to choose the family and your personal life to be the criteria that you make your final judgment on. Of course, you've got to pay the rent. You've got to pay the bills. That's a given. But if you have a chance at all to balance your life and your decisions on yourself and your being, your character, then that's the way to go. Character is what is going to take you through, and character is what you're going to build on. His character is not what you're going to learn in college or university or anywhere else other than by being you and doing what you do. Don't do spec deals. Do this for me for free, and when I get a deal and all that, so don't do them. Everybody that has something going on has something going on with it. If someone comes to you as an engineer and asks you to record this, they haven't got any money, but it looks like they're going to get a deal and all that, ask them who owns the publishing. If they own the publishing, tell them you want some of it. They have an asset. If what they're doing is worth anything, they should share that asset. Oh, I can't give up the publishing. This is Nashville. I can't give up the publishing. Yes, they can. Quite easily can. They can narrow it down to a particular recording of a particular song, any way you want. Don't give away music. Music is seen to be disposable now. It's free. It comes along with whatever. Kids download music because they can. People download music because they can. I think we should all write a letter to Steve Jobs and thank him for giving honest people a way of buying music, because they're the only people buying music. It's not the lack of people wanting music, it's the lack of people being able to afford music, and the fact that they can get it for free is why we're having some troubles in our industry. We're also having some great times. For some people, these will be the good old days. It's hard to believe, but they will be the good old days. And, I've had lots of good old days, and I hope I'm still creating some good old days for myself. Every day I do a job, that's a good old day,
Just so you know, I am seeing that publishing thing around the country with producer managers who are, now that there are 360 deals and now that the income from sales, record sales is down, there are people, it's not a nasty, ugly thing anymore to negotiate what you can, as Richard said, where there is money. So amen to that. Questions from anybody?
I'm sorry, I should have probably told you. A stem mix is when we're at the end of the process, and if we're working on Pro Tools, you open up a stereo track and you print a drum pass and a bass pass and a guitar pass and an acoustic guitar pass and a background pass and a lead vocal and a lead vocal effect pass. And sometimes you'll have a producer say, could you really stem this one out? We're not sure we got it. And they'll go back and they'll mess with it some. But that's basically, you'll have 32 passes of individual things that we have found a system where if you put it out the stereo mix, it sounds almost identical to the main mix, maybe just a little bit of noise, obviously, because it's going through the...
Basically, you can take 100 decisions not yet made and put them down into a dozen decisions still not made.
But those... but the... That was good. But those stems also have your sounds on them. They have the EQ you've done, they have the compression you've done, they've had maybe your effects, or you could be printing an effects stem and a non-affected stem, but a lot of times it's got your personal work as a mixer or an engineer on it.
Yeah, I'm not precious about my sounds. Ultimately it's about the artist. It's not about my deal. But if I work for an enormous amount of time on a vocal thing to have it communicate, that's the only thing that I'm taking issue with.
Yeah, and as Justin said, I mean, the drum stems, the bass stems, these are collectives. When he says guitar stems, it's not a single guitar necessarily, unless there's only one guitar on the project. It might be a collective of the guitars, as they were in the stereo mix, just without everything else playing, and likewise with the drums. And that's the way it goes, But invariably, somebody will want one of those guitars louder. So the stem.
The guitar player?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, God. That's the key to everything. What you just said is, if you want to talk about where we need to go as an industry, is encapsulated totally in what you just said. People should know the material before they get in. People should be ready for a performance. That's how records used to be. If I have an artist who walks in who doesn't know the lyrics to the song, we got a problem.
Yeah. This is a rehearsal room.
Yeah,
exactly. It used to be
that people
rehearsal was preparing to go into the studio.
Right.
Now it's to try and learn what they gave you on your records.
What he just said is absolutely the truth.
Make me a copy without the vocal, please.
But yeah,
give to the band so they can learn what's on the record. I mean, it's a joke, really.
Performance will save us, is what you're saying.
Back there?
You guys, awesome panel, awesome keynote. I want to thank you for mentioning about sticking with your integrity when sometimes it means not taking those jobs. And my big question is, can I have you get on the phone with my parents and family and, sort of explain that, how it's important. Sometimes you don't even, but, they don't understand, but it's good to hear somebody, vocalize that, where it's in line with that philosophy, because a lot of people are taking really awful work, and they don't realize that I think it hurts their reputation. I happily lost a lot of weight, in the last couple of years, so, it's actually turned out well.
Yeah. Hi, Russell. Thank you very much. It's a tough choice, of course. I mean, some of us are fortunate enough to be able to sit back and rely on perhaps a reputation to carry us through bumpy times or whatever. I'm very fortunate. I've not actually had to experience the bump and the troughs. I've been a series of peaks for me. I'm very, very lucky. But I'm not lucky when I've had, like I did the other night, a call from an engineer at midnight telling me he was thinking of checking out tonight. That's how serious this is. It's very personal to me. There are people very talented, and circumstances have taken us to a point where the passion isn't being vented. That there is no venue for some people to show their talents, and it gets to a stage where they have a family, they have responsibilities, they have commitments, and they're not even experiencing the option to take a job that isn't paying enough, that is crap. We've got to think about the people, and that's why I say you've got to think about yourself. You've got to have a backup plan now. And, the universities are turning out qualified personnel, but they're not qualified to be engineers. Universities are great places to learn about a subject. They're not necessarily the place to learn about how to do a job. An apprenticeship is the best way to go, where it's a formal apprenticeship or informal. Internships are usually just, you've got to learn how to set up chairs in a studio. If you're doing a big string section, that was a valuable lesson for those interns. The ones that turned up to settle this up. We're grateful to them. That is not really part of their education of being an engineer. Although apparently it's on the curriculum. Go there and do what they tell you. It's associated with music. Well, go clean the piano. It's a serious business, and it's not taken seriously by the schools. And That's why I don't teach, and that's why I'm not invited to speak at universities.
I have one thing to say about that. I'm not sure I entirely agree with the thing of not taking jobs that like doing things for free and stuff. I think I agree with taking publishing and stuff. But part of the key for me, I don't think I'm the greatest engineer in the world, but I work a lot, and I think that part of it is that I'm willing to once or twice a year take on a gig that maybe isn't about the dough, that's about the music. Now, I have the luxury of that in that I'm working a lot the rest of the year, so it's a unique case.
Pro bono.
And the only, yeah, exactly.
That's cool. That's not what I'm talking about.
And it's about learning new stuff. It's the opportunity for me to try new pieces of gear that I haven't been able to do when I'm on the roller coaster, and it's a means for me to get better as what I do and get my chops, keep my chops on an edge. The only other thing I can say about that is also, as an engineer and a producer, you have to be flexible. I mean, I've always been aghast at engineers when someone says, we want to record the record, but we can only afford this, and then an engineer would say, no, I only record analog, or I only record on this particular format. And it's like, that's impossible in my mind. You should be able to know every format and do whatever it takes to make the music great, because it's not about you, it's about the music. And I think that you'll work, and you'll have work, if you're flexible, and your attitude is not about me, and I'm the greatest engineer in the world. It's all about collaboration, that you're working with a team of people and that you're part of a team. And great music comes from collaboration. If you're part of that team and people recognize that, I think that your career will take off and you'll hang in there.
Yeah. I mean, this event, if I may, sorry, just before, it's going to be wonderful for many reasons. You're going to get to experience many opinions on how to do things, how things have been done, how things should be done. And that will be great information for you to take and make your own. Please do not think that what you're going to be shown is the way to do something.
Absolutely right.
You know, it's a way to try and find out, yes, it worked for me today, or doesn't work for me. In the same token, when it doesn't work for you, because it won't, don't blame them. Because it did work for them, you know? You've got to be open. Take what you can from this, make it your own, and that's when you win. It's when you make it your own. Sorry, sorry, big pardon.
I have a two-part question with
Do we have time for one more, Tom? One more question.
you mentioned you're taking part of the publishing, but being a songwriter, I ran into publishers who will only put the song if 100% of the publishing is available, so that creates a conflict there. What is your take on that, and/or like doing something like a 1-point override type of deal instead of something?
At one point of what?
If something were to come out of the tracks that you produce, so
If. Yeah, I mean, those are all wonderful things. And as far as, you're absolutely right, your publisher may say, you know, I take 100% or I take nothing. What about your share?
Well, that's where it comes from.
Yeah, we come. Yeah.
I have an opinion about that. I feel like everyone in the industry is taking a hit and having to find creative new ways of doing this, including myself as far as being a producer and where I take money, and I think the publishers need to start doing the same thing. And right now they're holding they're holding on to what they've got because that's where the real money is. And people with the real money don't want to lose it.
And it's good that they're holding on to what they got as well. There's a good side to this because they are maintaining control of something the rest of the industry has lost control of.
Yeah, that's true, too.
It's true.
You know, they're saying, no, this is the way it's done. We will not give this up. We will not give that up. The rest of, so we can give that away. You know, it's the industry's own fault, it's our own greed that's brought us to this point. We have to stop and be more professional. And
Well, would it be fair to say then, don't be afraid to negotiate and try to get things for yourself to make it, I mean, everybody, it's kind of a new world where everybody is looking for new streams of income and there are lots of different things to take into consideration that you have to do, so.
If you've made yourself
have the
invaluable,
self-respect
yes.
to.
yeah, but it's from every angle, though. Don't approach somebody and ask them to do something for free when you have an asset. That's rude. You know, it's wrong. Please do this for me. My family can still eat, but I want you to work for me, and I don't care whether your family eats. You know, I have an asset. I'll offer you a portion of this asset to do this work for me. It may not equate to dollars in your wallet right now, but you know you stand a chance of recouping something. I could offer you 10 points on a record that only ever gets played on the radio. If it gets played on the radio, you'll get some of the publishing. If it doesn't sell any records, those points are worthless. You try and get a job now as a mix engineer and say, I want 2 points. I say, sure. 3 points, of course. 10 points?
true.
Much as you want. How about $6,000? Can't go there. You know? You know? Because they will gladly give you what they know they're not going to have to pay. Okay? Now, we can either take some of the publishing, or we can revise the industry and make it so that records are worth people paying for. Put some talent on there.
That's my
Make
point.
it sound good so that it's attractive and somebody wants to own it like we used to. I need to have my Beatles record. It's not good enough that I hear it everywhere I go. I have to possess it. Do I want to possess insert name here? No. Not today necessarily. Some, yes, but not everything. There are a period of everything being like that. It's let's do something about it. Let's make our own future by not doing crap, by encouraging talent, and by being paid for what we do.
You couldn't agree more. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. For the next panel, Kevin will down.
That's awesome.
Coming up. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Justin. Much appreciated.